Internet. I'm Matt.
And I'm Monster Punter.
And this is the Parallax Scrolling Podcast, where we give you our perspective on video games and the news that affects them. And sometimes we get the video out on time.
It's a tough world out there sometimes, it would seem.
Yeah.
But
Especially when you have such a dynamic recording style like we do. Like, I'm loud and your decibels throw me off every time I'm going through the editing file.
what are you talking about?
Like you'll be like I'll set the audio levels just right, and it'll be like, okay, he's at -10, that's where he needs to be, and then all of a sudden 7 or 0. Like you spike. You spiked on the word couch last week. Couch. Like, who does that?
Listen.
Anyhow, that's the magic of editing. That's what I have to do. So it's that's why it takes a little longer, because I'm trying to make sure that I'm not making our audience ears bleed.
Well, I'm sorry, everyone. I'll say the word couch more often.
That's great. Just random conversation. Yeah, and so I think about this couch.
Yes.
Couch. Oh, what a week. This has been a heck of a week.
Well,
just really busy. Really, really stupid busy for me.
For me, not so much. My work busy season finally came to an end. So I worked some 70 to 80 hour work weeks, and that last week was like 90 to 100 hours I worked. Not a joke.
Good for you.
Yeah, well,
Enjoying your, I'm on vacation now.
kinda. I go back to work tomorrow, though.
Yeah, well, I'm at work every day.
So I spent that time. I beat Soul Hackers 2, and for anybody who wishes to play through that game, you have, of the 4 main characters, or the ones that you get to play anyway, you have to travel through these, what they call them, optional dungeons. And so I didn't actually beat anybody's dungeon. I decided I needed to beat the game because I have other games I want to get to and talk about. So I skipped those, and there's a series of questions at the end of the game that's supposed to determine what ending you get. And I answered the proper way to get the right ending, but I got the bad ending, which honestly I didn't think was too bad. And I guess the only reason why is because I didn't finish these other characters' subplots. And so if anybody's going to play through that game, I strongly suggest you play through the subplots for the characters, and then you'll probably make the right choices at the end of the game anyway, as far as the questions are concerned.
That's kind of crazy, though, because if they're subplots, then why would they just be main missions?
Deepening the bond with the characters, I suppose, is
Well, yeah,
really...
but I'm saying, if we really want you to get the good ending, well, then make the sub-dungeons not sub-dungeons, but actual dungeons.
I mean, that's the only thing I can think of, because I know I answered the questions the way they need to be answered to get the good ending. And there's this particular option in the last cutscene that you get if you're going to go for the good ending, but you don't if you supposedly answered one of those questions wrong. And the only reason I know I answered it wrong is because it was kind of a meme for me at some point. I was like, oh, I'm going to answer this question for all of them. Oh, it's the right way. Okay.
Fun. Well, I got actually 2 games I really got to play. Really excited I got to play them. So I talked before about Vampire Survivors.
Okay.
The full release finally came out. And he added extra stuff without telling anybody. There's extra levels. There's extra characters. There's extra things to do. There's actually a final boss level you get to keep going back to after you beat the game. It's really, really cool. and it's just so much fun. And now I get to play that game in its entirety. And he's still planning to do more. They're still planning to come out with more. So it's like fantastic. But I did that, and I started because one, I've been really wanting to play this game. Two, I want to record it because it's Halloween time, and I want to get some spooky stuff on my video channel, so I'm recording this one. I started playing Faith, the Unholy Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
For those who haven't heard that, even though I talked about it before, but if you haven't heard of it, it is a Atari-esque looking game. You play as a Catholic priest from the 80s, because it's supposed to take place during what was referred to as the Satanic Panic, where like everything was evil. You play as a Catholic priest who was part of a failed exorcism, and you're coming back to the house to finish the job. And it's so creepy. It's got the right levels of creepiness and terror. Like there's actual like scary moments, and it's so much fun. And I got to play the other 2 chapters. And I found out with this full release, there is a marathon mode. I was like, what's that? You literally play chapter 1, then chapter 2, then chapter 3 back to back. You do not stop.
Oh, well, that's cool.
And the one thing, like, chapter 1 has 5 different endings. I forget how many the other 2 chapters have. Like, they each have their own separate amount of endings depending on what you do. There's an achievement to get the good ending in marathon mode for all 3 chapters. I'm like, that sounds like fun, actually. I'm going to try and go for that. But, so those are kind of my, a little under the radar. I mean, considering that Faith got greatly overshadowed by Gotham Knights.
Speaking of Gotham Knights.
You stole my segue again. I'm going to, flip your chair. I purposely said that to set it up for myself, and you took it. You jerk.
I own all the segues.
No, you don't.
I
They're my
own
segues.
all the segues.
Yeah, I'm the one editing, so let's see how this goes.
I own all the segues.
I'll delete your segue and put in my own. You won't know.
Or will I?
You don't listen.
I do.
Whatever.
Either way, Gotham Knights has been getting a lot of bad press lately.
Mm-hmm.
I watched another Digital Foundry video on that because there was a lot of talk about the 30 FPS mode and the fact that there's no 60 FPS option or even 120.
Yeah,
to a lesser
30
degree.
FPS is the standard. It's not the performance mode. It's what it is.
And there's a broader topic to discuss as far as like 30 FPS versus 60 FPS and what you think is proper and everything. But setting all that aside for a moment, the graphical prowess that's on display for Gotham Knights to a large degree is not even as good as the previous gen Arkham series. The lights, the dynamic environments, the amount of people that are on the screen at once. These things are all lacking in Gotham Knights, but they were there in the Arkham games.
I think it adds to the conversation. Does hype kill video games? Because I feel like my brain is just thinking that the game came out too soon.
I don't know if it was even that...
because it feels like they were rushed.
It's possible, but I don't recall Gotham Knights being extremely hyped up. That doesn't...
For Gotham fans, like of all the Arkham games, there was a lot of hype. And that's where the issue comes in, is that these are the people who are going to play this game, obviously, who are going to jump on it day one, and then the game's 30 FPS and not as good as previous gen games. People are upset.
So here's where how do I put this? There's plenty of other games that have these modes available to them where they prioritize frame rate or prioritize resolution or whatever else they decide to name them.
Yeah.
For instance, I played Monster Hunter at prioritized graphics. Monster Hunter World on the PlayStation 4 because I had a PlayStation 4 Pro. I did that because that's what I cared about at the time. And to be honest with you, most of the Monster Hunter games are really 30 FPS for a long time anyway, so it wasn't that big a deal to make the transition.
Right.
But as far as like Arkham Knights is concerned, getting back to that for a moment, the developer said it's not as easy as toning down resolution to increase frame rate or something to that effect. And all I'm going to say is that that seems to be the case with a lot of other developers and what they've done.
Yeah.
Even in Soul Hackers 2, a RPG that has a prioritized graphics mode and an FPS mode in a game that doesn't need it.
That's interesting.
It's literally it's turn-based fighting. You don't really even need an FPS mode in that. In fact, I didn't even play it in FPS mode. I played it at 30 frames a second because I'm like, this doesn't require any kind of Twitch gaming elements or anything like that, however you want to say it.
Well,
so
I don't know. You just complete aside here. When you said that requires the Twitch gaming, that was one of the things that got added to Vampire Survivors. Is you can actually incorporate your Twitch chat, and they can select what happens to you, and they can select what weapons and stuff you get. Like that's actually really cool.
That's not the kind of Twitch I'm talking about, but that's still cool.
Yeah. Well, you said Twitch, it got my brain going. Right?
Okay. But so what I'm saying is that the developers for Arkham Knights, I don't know how to put this other than they may not be as talented as some of these other teams.
It feels like they're giving excuses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
like, oh, well, we can't do it because it's not as easy as you think it is. And that's just ridiculous. And
well, don't get me wrong. Programming's not easy. I'm sure it's
definitely.
not.
But like, especially that team, if that is the same team from the Arkham series, if that's the same team from all the Transformers games, like, yeah, you should be good at this. This isn't an acceptable answer from you.
I just implore everybody to watch that Digital Foundry video and tell me they couldn't have done better. Because the takeaway from that video is they certainly could have done better.
Well, shoot me the link for that, and I'll try and put it in the description.
Sure.
So, but yeah, no, like I said, it feels like they've been given like a ton of different excuses, and like that's even yet another reason why like they use that excuse to complain about having to put their games on the Xbox Series S.
Yeah.
And that's a problem too, because now other developers are complaining about the Series S, and that's just really messed up. And yes, I stole your segue because you stole mine, jerk. How does it feel?
You know what? As far as the Xbox Series S is concerned, the developers are they're begging Microsoft to drop the mandatory support. It's not unlike what they did last generation. You couldn't just make a game for the PS4 Pro. It had to have PS4 compatibility as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
Maybe that situation is not the exact same here because the PS4 install base was so huge when the Pro came out. It's like, why wouldn't I support this? But the Series S, there's some technical difficulty to get over. And I think not only is the GPU limited in it, there's also the problem with available memory. And you can tell that some of this is what they're talking about is actually true, because Microsoft came out with a patch to make more memory available on the Xbox Series S. And from my understanding is that you get it by turning off certain things that you may not be using in the software or the OS, and that frees up available resources for you to use in your game.
Well, and I think like it looks like the biggest argument is, just from reading the article, was that the Series S can push 1440p, but the Series X can push 4K. So even though it's the same engine, the one machine can run a better resolution. So that's why people are toning the games down, and they have to force it into the Series S, and that's why they want to not have that holding them back. And that just sounds... Again, I'm not a developer. I don't know the understanding of the complications of the developing process. But it feels like the resolution coding should be able to be fixed for that, you know?
It's not, the resolution isn't the problem so much as the amount of GPU and CPU and RAM resources that you have to be able to do what you want to do. So they're arguing that the Xbox Series S is an albatross, and as far as I'm concerned, I think the Xbox Series S, while I think it's a very good system, I concede that it's maybe a little bit underpowered, and Microsoft should have had more power in it when it came out, either by ramping up clock rates or adding more RAM when it came out. To make it 4 teraflops compared to the Series X, 12 teraflops I think is a bit too much of a gulf in there. If they had made it 6 and made it half as powerful as the Series X, I don't think we have these conversations, and gave it 12 gigabytes of memory instead of 10 in total.
Well, I guess here's my big question. Couldn't they have just done something, since the Series S is a digital only system and the Series X has a disk drive? Couldn't they have done something with the way game development... Again, I don't understand these things, but couldn't they have done something with the game development so that the data to push the extra resolutions or whatever else they want to really push on the game can be put onto the disk? So, so it doesn't get added to the digital file, and then...
No, you end up downloading everything onto your hard drive, and you play off your hard drive nowadays anyway. So whether it's on the disc or not doesn't really even matter.
Well, right, but that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're playing everything digitally anyways, why not just have it so that when you put the disc in, it gives you access to the digital version of the game, which is like the bulk of the game itself, and then the disc drive has like the extra graphical updates and stuff.
The game discs, to a large degree nowadays, are just, how do I put it? They look nice, but they don't serve a huge purpose anymore. Unfortunately, going forward, I think that'll be even more the case. The fact of the matter is, you put in your disc, it's going to download the latest version of the game anyway, with any sort of patches and updates applied, with whether that be for graphics or whatever it is. And there's sometimes maybe they can have separate files for the X and S, but I don't know if that's really... I don't know that aspect of it off the top of my head. But all I'm going to say is, what it boils down to is, with respect to Arkham Knights, if there's tons of other studios that can get the game running at 60 FPS on the Xbox Series S at lower resolutions, and let's just be honest, if you want 120 on the Xbox Series S, you're probably looking at 720p or sub 720p. So it'll look very blurry by comparisons, but you can get it to work. I think that this is more of an ego problem, more so than a technical expertise problem as well.
I think so. I think it is, because and it's just weird that seems to be like the current theme of things with video games. It's like, it's the issue of ego right now. Like the whole thing with Bayonetta felt like it was an ego issue. The whole thing going on with Series S feels like it's an ego issue. It's just, why can't we just game? Why can't we just game?
Because everything gets turned into... I mean, the fanboys have to fanboy.
Curse you, fanboys.
It's just not worth it. Take it from someone who used to be a hardcore Sega Genesis fan. Never mind, I'm still a Sega Genesis fanboy. Anyway,
I was gonna say, you're from a former? No, you ain't no former. Whatever.
I love the Super Nintendo. Don't get me wrong, but if I was on a desert island, you better give me my Genesis. either way, it doesn't make any sense to be a fanboy.
No, not in this day and age. When you have access to literally any system or any way to play, it doesn't make sense to be a fanboy like that.
I get that to a certain degree. There's those out there that, you, especially when you're younger, you don't have the financial wherewithal to own everything. And so I get it. I was the kid on the playground too that fought for his Sega Genesis over Super Nintendo because mom and dad sure as hell weren't going to buy me a $200 Super Nintendo back in the day. So my Sega
either, but I managed to get one.
But so I get it, right? You don't want to feel like you don't want to be the kid who bought the TurboGrafx 16. You know what I mean?
The Atari Jaguar.
Yeah, I mean, I love those systems too, but they didn't make it very long.
I will say this: I'm not a fan of systems. I'm a fan of games.
Me too, except for Sega Genesis.
Even then, like, and that's where I want to be. Like, if we're gonna be fanboys, let's be fanboys of video games, their concept in general. Let's just be fans of that. And like, oh, this system's better. Are you sure? Like, maybe for one development house, it's easier to get their game on the Xbox, and for another development house, it's easier for them to get their game on the PlayStation, or the Switch, or the PC. You don't know. Just let people game and shut up.
Well, even it matters even more nowadays. If we go back to the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis games, just to like beat the horse a bit more, the architectures in those systems were still very different. The Sega Genesis had a Motorola 68,000 CPU plus a Z80 Zilog chip for its audio, among other things. Mm-hmm. Yamaha, I think, was in there too, a Yamaha chip. The Super Nintendo had an evolution of the Nintendo CPU, among other things. I can't remember off the top of my head the Super Nintendo underlying architecture very well, but there were differences to where you could have the same game on both systems, and they were different enough because of the underlying hardware where you could tell the difference.
Yep.
The only difference between our systems nowadays, let's put the Switch aside for a moment because that's a different type of target audience and target hardware and things like that. Let's just talk
great things though. That's
what I'm saying, but for comparison's sake, it's not exactly the same.
Right.
Because it's trying to be a portable system. Honestly, I think the Switch is more of a portable system than a TV console system anyway. But the architecture underlying the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One even, and now with the current generations with the PS5 and Series X and S, that architecture is made by AMD. They are almost identical nowadays. And there's very little differences between the two as far as the capabilities of the system. The PS5 does have a couple different things in it. It has the Tizen, I think it's called Tizen. Tempest engine, where they have a special CPU cluster for sound, which is great. So technically speaking, they can do better sound than the Xbox. And they have the Polygon engine, or Geometry engine, that's what it's called, Geometry engine, that's supposed to help them out with pushing out better graphics or be more efficient at it than just having more CPU clusters, or GPU clusters, sorry.
You know what I would love to see? And I'm being honest, and if somebody steals this idea, I don't care.
You want to see me talk less about the technical aspects of these systems?
I just want to see you talk less. But no, what I want to see is I would love for something like you're saying, like Sony has a better sound system, but like Microsoft might have a better graphics system. I would love for somebody to go like into either current gen or just the previous gen and say, hey, which system had the best what? Okay, this one had the best graphics engine. This one had the best sound engine. This one had the best Ethernet connection. This one had the best whatever. Just grab the best of each system and put them together into one thing and release it. And just show everybody, like, you could play everything on this.
Well, Honestly, more and more that's becoming the PC nowadays with Microsoft and Sony putting out all their games on the PC. But PCs are very expensive for good reason. If
Well,
you're not
there's also the Steam Deck now, which is
the
$300.
Steam Deck, sure, but that's, I mean, it's not going to be able to play AAA games for a long time, and from what I can tell,
No,
so
it looks like if it's being released on Steam, it'll play it for the most part.
for now,
Yeah.
but I think given the power that it has, it won't be long until the Steam Deck. I don't want to say it's going to be irrelevant in a couple of years, but it's going to get really hard.
So you mean they're going to have to release another system like the Steam Deck 2
But
or the Steam Deck Series X? Like, who else does that? That's what I'm saying. Like, if all these other companies are like, oh, well, we're going to release a better version of our system, okay, fine. But like, why sit there and nitpick about what's going to have what's better? Why not just make it all one giant machine that works?
because the life, how do I put it?
Why can't things work the way I want them to?
Because life doesn't work that way.
Well, poop on life.
And if I was at Valve, I would call the Steam Deck 2 the Water Vapor 2, just because it's fun.
That's dumb.
It is.
That's just stupid.
But the fanboys would still buy it.
Probably.
But
We are digressing and going around in circles. You had something else about resurrecting something. Resurrecting an old article from us. Something about Stadia?
oh, it's not resurrecting an old article, but there is good news out there for the tens of Stadia fans. You should see the look on his face right now.
No comment. No comment.
The devs are working really hard to port those people's saves over to competing platforms or other ways. So that guy that had over 2,000 hours in Red Dead Redemption 2 sounds like he's going to be able to keep his save.
That's good. That's actually some good news.
So I guess how often are you going to see this where the community comes together to do this for these streaming platforms? Remains to be seen. I guess it's good news for now.
Well, it's not just the community; it's the actual company. That's the thing that kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, but I mean, how often are we going to see this for every one of these streaming services that comes out and goes under? Speaking of streaming services, I don't know if you heard it, but Netflix is supposed to be coming out with a streaming service themselves.
Yep.
So, while one is leaving, another one is coming in, and what makes them think they're going to do the whole streaming idea better anyway?
Because they've been doing it well before with movies.
But movies is a passive
art form. It's the controlling of the media, controlling how the streaming of the data. They're more experienced at it.
Sure, but streaming a movie is not like streaming a game. Latency is one of the utmost concerns, and heaven forbid that your internet drops while you're playing.
Well, right. I think they're actually looking into that stuff. They're not it has not fully launched yet. They're looking into these things. That's why they made an announcement saying, "Hey, we're looking into doing this."
I'm going to make a prediction that I guess eventually will be wrong, but in my lifetime, I don't think local hardware is going to go away.
Oh, I don't feel like it will either.
Because that's still the least latency way to play your games. And especially in a competitive environment no one's going to play Counter-Strike Go over the internet. People still play that.
Over the internet?
I'm meaning streaming over the internet.
How do you think they play with each other?
No, what I mean is the whole streaming idea where you have just a controller and there's a mainframe somewhere that's actually the system and streaming this video back to you.
That's actually how that game works.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. I have it.
That's not. No, I think you're misunderstanding me. But the fact that what I'm saying is, for competitive games, there's no one who's going to. I shouldn't say no one, but anybody who wants to compete on a serious level will use a streaming setup for their gaming. They're going to have local hardware.
We shall see. Anyways, if you guys have anything you want to add to these conversations, or you just have questions about it that even we don't have the answers to, go ahead and put it in the comments down below. Tweet at us something, but let us know what you're thinking. We appreciate that. So, news aside, it's time for the big discussion. The big spooky condition discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. Scary games. It's Halloween.
Resident Evil 4?
We're playing scary. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I was gonna add that into the scary games conversation.
Okay.
So, scary games. It's time for scary games. Talk about scary games, and I want to talk about our personal experience with horror games and stuff like that, and then definitely want to address it's news, but it's also personal revelations about Resident Evil 4 coming out, the Resident Evil 4 remake coming out, and Silent Hill and the 4 Silent Hill games that are coming out.
Yep.
That's crazy. I think in that respect, I think the scariest thing is if those games actually come out, because that's so not what Konami does.
It's going to be pachinko at home?
Probably. That's even more terrifying, I think. So yeah, let's first get into these two stories. So Konami's announced that they're remaking Silent Hill 2. There's going to be a game called Silent Hill F. There's also Silent Hill Townfall, I believe it's called. And then there's a movie. Yet another movie. Which, did you ever see the first one?
I never watched the first one, but I heard it was really good, actually.
So I have a story for that one. I went to go see it with a bunch of friends, and we went to go see it opening night. The theater was huge. It was like one of the stadium theaters, and it was packed. Okay. Brief premise of the movie: this mom is trying to find her daughter, and her daughter's in Silent Hill. Okay, that's all you need to know. So there's a part in the movie, everybody in the theater is quiet. This movie is terrifying. It messes with your head. It's so intense that I hit my microphone. That's how intense it is. But it's so intense, and it gets to this part where she's walking around a burnt down church, or the mom is, and the whole theater's quiet. And she's walking around, and she's trying to find her daughter. And she turns and looks behind her, and there is her quote-unquote daughter, and her hands are on fire. And she says, "Look, Mommy, I'm burning." And I laughed so hard, and no one else laughed. I'm in this massive stadium of people, and no one laughed because I thought that was hilarious. I shrunk into my chair. I sunk because nobody laughed with me. And I'm talking when I say this is a big theater, there's 200, 300 people in this theater. And I'm the only one who laughed. Oh, that was scary. That was probably the scariest part of the movie for me. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to these Silent Hill announcements. Drama is stupid when it comes to stuff like this, but people are upset about the way Jack looks in the remake and how the game kind of looks. It looks fine to me, and the developer even had to come out and say, like, okay, for everybody who's looking at that one screenshot and is demanding or just like stating for a fact that the reflection of Jack is looking at you, the player, and not Jack, is wrong. It's not true. He's looking at himself. And he even shows a picture of the guy that they did the mocap with, who's looking at himself. It's like, it's all intentional to look at himself. He's not looking at you. Cut it out.
The gaming public at large. So.
Yeah, right.
Listen, I've never really been a Silent Hill guy myself. I've been more of a Resident Evil player over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Horror is not something I play a ton of. But I have enjoyed some horror games over the years, mostly.
Yeah, so what we play is what we enjoy, but...
Yeah. But the Silent Hill the franchise, it's nice to see it return the way it has.
Yep.
We'll see if the games are any good.
Oh, definitely.
I think Konami, they're outsourcing practically everything.
Yeah, the remake is being done by Bloober Team, which is known for horror games, so it's kind of like a good thing.
Well, the last couple they've made have not been critically acclaimed, Medium being one of those. But setting all that aside, I don't think Konami has a development team of their own really anymore, from what I can tell. I don't know if any of these are being internally developed. I think even like the Suikoden remakes and everything are being handled by third parties. So we'll see how these all end up. I hope that they're good. I hope that they turn out well, but who knows at this point.
Right. And speaking of remakes, we do have to talk about Resident Evil 4.
It looks really good.
It looks really good, but there are just a couple things that hang me up. First off, the dog.
I was wondering if you were going to tell me.
Oh, absolutely. Like, when I first saw that tweet, I was like, oh, you got... No. So apparently the dog that you saved in the first version of the game is now just straight up dead. Like, at least that's how it appears. It could just be playing dead, and you can go up and interact with it and actually save it. Who knows? But that kind of sucks. I mean, it was like the one small ray of hope in the entire game. And it happens early on, and it's just something like, if you decide to be a decent human being and save a video game dog, you are rewarded for that later on. So there's that. Then there is Lord Salazar. And for anybody who saw me tweet about it, somebody put a side-by-side comparison because they were doing it for a bunch of different characters for the game. Which, side note, Luis looks really cool. Like, I'm kind of impressed with that one. But they showed Lord Salazar back to back, like how he looked originally and how he looks in this game. And I had to tweet out, I said, so he's gone from Tiny Napoleon to ring-possessed Bilbo Baggins. I was also going to go with Tiny Napoleon to Tiny Beethoven, but I felt like he looks a little bit more like Bilbo Baggins at that point. So it's just like, I don't like the new look. He looks less serious, which is not saying much because Lord Salazar in the original does not look serious. There's something sinister and off about him, but he looks like somebody you can deal with. This current Lord Salazar literally looks like somebody I was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to back you over with a truck and I'm going to go about my day. You don't look like somebody I want to be even bother with. So
I guess we'll see what ends up happening.
We'll see what ends up happening. But I did say this one last note about the dog, because people were so hyped about the chainsaw parry that was shown in the video.
Right. Yeah.
And I said,
knife versus chainsaw. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Chainsaw wins.
Well, no, it's your gun.
Oh, that's right. The gun.
You use his gun to parry it. So if I have to choose between parrying a chainsaw with my gun or saving that dog, I'm saving that dog. And that's the end of that conversation. So we'll see what those games have to offer us. Definitely want to know what's going to happen with those.
I thought the trailer was really good. I watched some of the extended gameplay. Thought that looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to it. Very much looking forward to it.
But yeah, so I did want to talk about. I grab my phone here. I wanted to talk about our experiences with horror games in general. What has been like your most profound horror game? Or not even, let's not even do horror games. Scary moments in video games. What would you say is probably like the scariest moment you've had in a video game?
That's a good question. It's hard to know off the top of my head.
Okay. I have mine. I do have mine.
Okay, go for it.
No. I want to see if you can...
No, go for it.
Okay, fine. I'll tell you mine, and then it'll give you time to think about yours. Imagine, if you will, a young Matt sitting in his parents' house, 10:30 at night, in the living room. All the lights are off in the house. All of them. It's complete darkness except for the glow of the TV screen. And this young Matt is sitting there, and he is playing Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Nothing terrifying about this game, right? You are Solid Snake, you are Raiden, you're running around, you're trying to save the government, you're trying to save the world. I get to this part in the game where Raiden is captured and he is naked. So he has to run around and escape the bad guys, but he has none of his gear. The only thing he seems to have is his transceiver. And the entire time, about every 10 seconds or so, you get an incoming call from the colonel who sent you on this mission in the first place. So you're trying to be stealthy and quiet. He's trying to move quickly through this complex to get his weapons and gear back. And he's constantly getting these slightly unsettling receiver calls from his boss. Until finally, there's one more transmission. And Matt answers it. And the colonel says, it's getting awfully late. Why don't you go ahead and turn the console off and go to bed? I never turned a game off so fast in my life. That was terrifying. I was so unsettled after I played that. And I played horror games, and I've, played through Resident Evils, like 1 through now on 8. I've played them. I'm not, it's not like it's something out of the ordinary, but this moment was so scary. I just, even to this day, it's still like, I can't believe that actually happened. That's messed up, man. Like when you're playing Metal Gear Solid 1 and Psycho Mantis is like, oh, you're a Castlevania fan, I see, because he's reading your memory card and he looked for all the Konami games. Like, yeah, okay, that was cool. That wasn't like terrifying, but in that one moment, the atmosphere and everything just came together so that the game would tell me to go to bed. Yeah. So that's probably my scariest moment in gaming. What's yours?
Like I said, it's tough to say for sure, but I do remember being younger and playing like Warriors of Might and Magic or something. It was a dungeon crawler game and never really got very far, and it always died. And when you died, it'd show like your skeleton face and body and things like that. And probably was like 8, 9-ish at the time, and that disturbed me quite a bit. I didn't like that. But other than that, like the only times I get really scared is when I know, like when I have, just in general, I haven't saved it in a while, and I know if I die, I'm going to lose a ton of progress, and that's when it's like the button, the what button kind of gets pushed, and that kind of is more intense. There's been like some, there's been plenty of times in Resident Evil the shock stuff does kind of get you a little bit, but I can't think of anything that I've been like super duper scared of. I've noped a lot of stuff because I just didn't want to do it.
Let me ask you this then. What is scarier for you? A jump scare or atmosphere?
Probably more a jump scare.
See, I kind of feel like jump scares are just a cheap tactic. It's like, oh, look, that bloody monster face just came out of nowhere. No, it's the fact that something came out of nowhere. That's what scared me, not the bloody monster face. Like, you could have turned the corner and there would be a guy go, pickles! And all of a sudden you got to change your pants. That's not, But when you build that atmosphere and you set that tone and then something happens, like that's, for me, that's the moment. That's the trigger. Like, oh, I am so unsettled by this moment.
You're the guy who got scared by the toasty guy in Mortal Kombat, aren't you?
No. I was trying to think about that. I'm like, no, I didn't get scared by him. No, I there have been plenty of moments where it's like, when it feels like the game is breaking the fourth wall, and it breaks the fourth wall to the point where it's talking about what you're doing almost to the point, like on the dot. That stuff is terrifying. Because it's like, oh my gosh, the game is like breaking out of its chains and I'm dealing with it right now. That stuff is terrifying. That stuff's scary. But yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, I'm not a huge horror movie person. Like, I know I said, like, I watched Silent Hill because it was a video game and I played Silent Hill. But like, I think for me, I don't like horror movies compared to horror games, because in horror games I can do something. Whereas with a horror movie, I am just a sitting participant of terror. I don't enjoy that. But like, hey, if it's Resident Evil and, X gonna come give it to me, I'm gonna run. I'm gonna get out of the way. Or if Nemesis shows up, I'm gonna get out of the way and I'm gonna shoot him as much as I can. Like, that kind of experience, being able to interact with the world I'm dealing in and have some say in whether my character lives or dies because of that, is a much better experience than me just being an unwitting participant in someone's some character's terror. Just sitting there watching it doesn't have the same pull for me. So, what about you? Anything else?
No, I think that's all I got.
Okay. I was gonna say, you're not really the super, like, I think I'm more the scary game person than you are.
I don't know. I mean,
you play Resident Evil, yeah, but I don't think you go out of your way to play the horror games.
Typically, no. But
yeah.
I mean, if I'm around people who want to play them, that's when I find a lot more enjoyment out of them too.
I will say that, like, being able to sit around with a bunch of buddies playing a game in one room and it's scary, that's fun because you're sharing in the fear together, and that's a whole nother level. But like those moments when you're by yourself, it's something different.
Yeah.
So, what are your scary games? What are your scary game moments? What do you feel about horror games? Do you like them? Do you not like them? What do you feel about like anything we've talked about today? Again, like I said earlier, throw it down in the comments. Hit us up on Twitter or something. Talk to us. We like talking to you. And we're going to try to be a little more consistent with these episodes. Or at least I'm going to try to be better with them. In fact, this one, I do apologize. Like, so, little caveat, little side bit. Episode 12, I try to do something different. I don't know if you could hear it. I know headphone users can hear it for sure. But I said it so that, like, I'm coming out of your left ear and Monster's coming out of your right ear. So try to make you more inclusive. Like, you're in the room with us having this conversation. This episode, I'm probably just going to try to get it together and get it out because I want to be, one, on time for Halloween, but two, I also just want to get your interaction faster. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that's it for today. So thank you all very much for listening. We do appreciate you. Have yourselves a fantastic day. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.
Later.